This is your World War III update. Here's what's going on. So yesterday at the Valdai conference, Vladimir Putin made some profound statements, but they were so subtle that they seemed to escape the scrutiny of most YouTube commentators. And that's intentional. You see, you don't want to draw public attention to these things, but you do want to telegraph to the CIA that we know what you're doing. Vladimir Putin said that he thought, and he had evidence, that the United States is getting ready to do a nuclear test. Okay? That's essentially what it amounted to. I'll tell you how we made that inference in just a moment. But that was the gist of it. He also said a lot of other things that we're going to try to dissect and analyze in just a moment. Forgive me, guys. I'm getting over this illness, but it's still, a little murky up there. So, I might have to step out of the car for a coughing fit in just a moment, but we're going to get through this. We also need to talk about gold and precious metals that are rocketing, ascending to the heavens, approaching $4,000 an ounce on gold and closing in on 50 on silver. Now, look, I'm the kind of person that always prioritizes Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What do you need? You need your health, you need your food, you need your shelter, you need your security, you need your medication. You get those things squared away. That's prepping priorities, right? But when you're over 40, you start looking at what can I do with my savings, my disposable income to hedge against the totalitarian future that awaits, and that's why people look at gold and metals. The problem is, of course, is that these are barometers for social chaos. So as these things ascend to the heavens, that means they're stemming from the hellish conditions below. And I remember distinctly when Bob Moriarty told me, he's like, Nate, when gold goes to $5,000 an ounce, you don't want to live in that world. You don't want to live in a world where it's $5,000 an ounce. And I look at the world right now where we're closing in at 4,000. And I'm seeing the guns taken away. They're rolling out digital ID. In other countries, you got paramilitary in the streets, okay? And half the country is cheering it on, not knowing what it's going to look like when the other shoe drops. Because I can tell you right now, my American brothers and sisters, that is a dress rehearsal for SHTF. That is World War III, civil defense training. Trump said as much. He's like, we need to train in the inner cities. Okay? The left locked you down. Now they're putting military in the streets. Eventually, these two things will meet. Okay? This is what you need to understand. Now, they're putting Hamas on ice. They got a deal. What does that mean? That means that Netanyahu needs a diversion, and that's going to be Iran. So they need to put Hamas on ice. They need to get the hostages back, and then guess what? That's your one-way ticket to nuking Iran. That is what they're going to do. And the Iranians are on notice and they're getting ready. We'll talk about what's going on with the Tomahawk missile deliveries in Ukraine as well, because they're really at this point just trying to flesh out all the logistics. There really is no conversation as to whether or not it will happen. It will happen. It's just a matter of when. Now, let's talk about some of these statements that Vladimir Putin made, because this was really truly profound statements from Vladimir Putin, who's always composed and congenial. And he was, very much so, especially compared to the WWE-like speech that was given by Trump, where he was pontificating to a room full of generals who were allegedly walking on eggshells before. I think they're going to be walking on more eggshells now, only not going to be, with blue hair, transgender, whatever. It's going to be with the military-industrial complex who wants them to go to wars that they might not agree with. I should also note that at the time of making this video, there are 6 E-6 nuclear command and control planes up in the air in the United States. That might be a drill. It probably is, but they're never going to tell you if it's not an exercise. We all know that. So here's what's going on. So Putin says the following. Some people are preparing these tests, referring to nuclear tests. We see it, we know it, and if they happen, we'll do the same. Now, of course, he's referencing, I think, satellite imagery that confirms that the United States are getting prepared to do a nuclear test. Now, this was actually confirmed by a mainstream media report about 18 months ago, where they talked about how the Chinese, the Americans, and the Russians are all getting ready to do nuclear tests, and they can derive that from satellite imagery that shows these former nuclear testing grounds being refurbished and resurrected, roads built, buildings built, which indicates that they're getting ready to do these tests. And it's looking like, we might start seeing some hydrogen bomb tests. The Chinese are threatening hydrogen bombs. So it's going to get ugly. Nuclear proliferation is going to get a return here in the 2020s. So if anybody is megalomaniacal enough to pull the trigger on that one, it's going to be Trump, okay? It's going to be the Department of War who decides, you know what? This new technology that's come out, we got to see if we can't create some new nuclear weapons before the other guy does. And it's going to be a whole new arms race once again. But that's really incredible that Putin would say as much. And I don't think he would say that if he didn't mean it. Now, could he be thinking about the Ukrainians? Are the Ukrainians getting ready to test some nukes? That's possible too. But I can't see that not eliciting a much bigger response. Okay, and I don't think he's talking about a non-adversarial nation. I should remind you, he did not specify the United States, but we can infer that it is, because it's not going to be France, because that's not going to be a good day for France if they test a nuke. And I think if anybody, it's going to be the United States, who can do it from the comfort of being separated by two major oceans and not sharing a continent with the Russians or the Chinese. So he also goes on to say, in reference to talking about Kiev's attempts to strike Russian nuclear power plants, or places that the nuclear power plants are dependent on certain power supplies in order to cause those to go into some sort of meltdown, or potentially just have some effect of not being able to cool the spent fuel rods and things like that. And some radiological event. He's saying this is a dangerous game, and people on the other side should also understand. It's funny how he doesn't say Kiev. He's starting to speak in these generalities, like referring to the West, essentially. Also understanding that if they're going to play it so dangerously, they still have operating nuclear power plants on their side. And what's stopping us from retaliating in kind? Let them think about that, he says. We're confident in our nuclear shield, he says. We know what to do tomorrow and the day after. The Day After was a movie that was released in the 1980s, and I believe it was in response to the BBC's Threads, which depicts what a nuclear war would look like in the aftermath in the UK. Now, Putin just said, we're confident in our nuclear shield. We know what to do tomorrow and the day after. The Russians are prepared not only to fight a nuclear war, he's saying, but how to survive on the other side. And they most certainly are built to endure that sort of thing. The Moscow subway system was built for that purpose, to house hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, in the case of a nuclear detonation. I can't remember how deep it is exactly, 100 meters or something like that, parts of it. So yeah, I mean, they've war gamed all of this stuff, and it's only a matter of time before it goes down. He goes on to say, with reference to the Tomahawk missile deliveries, and just note, if they're talking about Tomahawks being delivered, that means they're already in the logistical planning phase. If it's entered the public discourse, then, it's simply a matter of how can we get these things there? How can we deploy them in a way that the Russians are going to destroy them before we can get them off the ground? And of course, it's problematic because it's a nuclear platform. Putin says, using Tomahawks without the direct participation of American military personnel is impossible. This would mark a completely new, qualitatively new stage of escalation, including in relations between Russia and the United States. So, what does he mean by that? Did he specify that they're going to retaliate? Not necessarily. He's just saying that that's going to mark a significant increase in tensions between Russia and the United States. And Putin, in a very statesman-like fashion, did not deride Trump at all. That's just not his style to do that. He usually makes these threats, almost directing them almost beyond Trump towards the deep state, so not to draw the ire of Trump's wrath, at least not Trump's public persona's wrath, because, he wants to keep this facade of niceties going as long as possible. Because they all know Day X is coming. It's just a matter of postponing the inevitable. This is why you have those 6 E-6 nuclear command planes flying around like it's an exercise. There are no exercises at this point. None whatsoever. Every single exercise from this point forward, we must presume that there is a slim chance, at least, that there is going to be an above zero chance that it's going to be the real deal. Russia's countermeasures will not be long in coming, he claims. It seems to me that the response to these threats will be, to put it mildly, very convincing. I think he's referring to probably Orezhnik, I presume. They're not going to be targeting the United States because they use Tomahawks, but they're going to be, lighten it up. If we are fighting, and this is in response to Trump calling Putin a paper tiger, which I got to admit, you got Pete Hegseth bragging about blowing up fishing boats that wouldn't have enough gas on board to get 100 nautical miles, never mind all the way to the United States from Venezuela, blowing up these ships with, advanced $30 million drones and bragging about that. And here you have the Russians fighting off. I don't like saying the entirety of NATO, but they really are fighting NATO's proxy at its fullest, at the most you can get before it crossing the red line. And they're actually making gains on the front line. So for Trump to call Russia a paper tiger, well, what does that mean for NATO if they are defeating them, at least conventionally? Now, NATO, NAFOs will say, well, yeah, but, all of NATO's assets that are, in the surrounding countries aren't being deployed, like all of the fancy aviational technology that they've been given by the Americans or the 4th-gen fighter jets that the European countries have. And that is true. I guess the question is, how much would of a difference would it make? I think it would make a difference. But at the same time, I think this is part of the reason why Russia has so much of their forces in reserve, because they know that day is coming. Anyways, he says, if we're fighting the entire NATO bloc, we are moving, advancing, and we feel confident, and we are a paper tiger, then what is NATO itself? See how eloquently he doesn't diss Trump there. It's just a valid retort. It's not saying, anything about American military capabilities, even though he kind of is. He's saying NATO, which encompasses that. Saying, what about NATO himself? A paper tiger, what follows then? Go and deal with this paper tiger. All right? He's saying, well, take out this paper tiger, burn it, crumple it, do what you got to do. Why haven't you done it yet? Maybe it's because you can't. And all you can do is shoot fishing boats. Shoot fish in a barrel. I guess we're going to find out what they can do in the Iran war that's coming up here. The U.S. is expanding THAAD missile deployments even more to Israel, increasing launch pads from 6 to 11. The site hosts 2 of 6 global batteries, and that suggests that they're getting ready for a Iranian counterattack to what they're about to do to Iran again. Russian military planes apparently have been flying into Iran with regularity. President Pezeshkian is proposing moving the capital from Tehran to the south due to overexpansion, water shortages, and subsidence. But some are suspecting that this has something to do with decentralizing the chain of command even more, because a lot of Tehran's capabilities and government buildings are in Tehran, so you would want to distribute that. However, I am told that a lot of the provinces in Tehran are, I'm probably not pronouncing it, Tehran, they are meant to be decentralized and meant to operate without any sort of federal oversight, so that in the case of war, they can all act independently. So this is why Iran would be hard to defeat in a ground invasion and actually hold down. Plus, you have the besieged forces, which number in the millions, which they could activate at any moment. For some reason, though, Iran is not living in a perpetual state of martial law, and I can't understand why. I mean, you would want to be at the highest point of vigilance at this point in time, especially with all of these rumors. I mean, you would want to be locking it down. If anywhere needs military in the streets, it's definitely in Iran right now, okay? Iran's central bank is going to expand the money supply starting Saturday to counter the rial's fall versus the dollar. Something tells me the math ain't mathin'. Blames demand, not sanctions. So they're claiming that something, I don't know how they're rationalizing this, but if they just print more money, that's going to stop inflation. I think that's the definition of inflation, isn't it? So yeah, it's not looking very good. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like anybody's going to bat. For some dumb reason, Iran doesn't want to crawl under that nuclear umbrella of Russia and China. I understand you're proud, but you also got to understand the art of war, okay? And sometimes you got to humble yourself. And at this point, if Iran doesn't have a nuclear umbrella, if they don't have nuclear weapons already, then unless they can ensnare the United States into a ground war, which they're not going to be able to win, at least not without incurring massive amounts of casualties and expense, then I just don't see how they're going to come out on top on that. They might not be defeated, but they certainly ain't going to win. The USS Gerald R. Ford is entering the Mediterranean Sea now, so I'm not sure how long that means it's going to take it past the Strait of Gibraltar. So that means it's probably got, another few days, maybe a week to get into position for some Middle East confrontation. Of course, it's going to be out on the periphery, away from the Iranians' alleged hypersonic missile capabilities. Iran has introduced a new drone called Gaza. It's a new long-range drone that has a range of about 4,000 kilometers and carry up to 12 bombs. And it looks very similar to the one that they brought down. I think it was did they bring down a Reaper? I can't remember what they brought down. It was many years ago. They hacked it. And it looks very similar to that. So that's what's going on in that theater. And yeah, it's only a matter of time before things pop off. Zelensky is indicating that Ukraine may soon receive enhanced U.S. aid for long-range strikes into Russia after the Trump meeting. Some extra goodies. That's what Zelensky is claiming. There was an explosion in California yesterday at an oil refinery. My knee-jerk reaction was like, okay, are the Russians finally getting back at us? That's what I suspected. But it's hard to say because, while these things are rare, they do happen. In fact, there's about a dozen or so, based on my research, instances of oil refinery fires every year in the United States, not of this magnitude, mind you. Nonetheless, it is a thing. So it could very well have been a hack. It could have been some sort of, attack. It could be by drones. There could be a lot of things, right? So there's a lot of ways you can do this, and the United States and the West in general is very vulnerable. We've been in a very comfortable situation where we've not had to put in air defense systems in and around our critical infrastructure, but the times they are a-changing. ICE raids continue day after day across the country, and everybody's playing into this silly Hegelian dialectic. And again, you need to understand, government never relinquishes control. Okay, so when the left gets in next, because what always happens is one side gets a little bit of power, they get a little taste of power, and they let it go to their head, and they push it to the limit. And what that does is that fires that pendulum back in the other direction. That's what you've seen in 2020, or 2021, I guess, after J6, when all hope seemed lost for the Republicans. Like, I mean, it seemed like that was it, right? You had, Trump, who was banned off all of social media, came back with a vengeance. Why? Because the left pushed way too hard. And this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen with Trump. They're going to push way too hard, and the left is going to come back with a vengeance, and they're going to keep those military on the streets, right? And all of a sudden, then you're going to hear Alex Jones screaming about martial law again. I mean, this stuff is so predictable. They're never going to relinquish the controls. They're not going to give that up. So, they might give back some trivial things that don't matter, that are nice little convenient wedge issues to keep people fighting with one another, take their attention away from the big prize. But at the end of the day, they're going to keep all those things in play. And this is what I'm hoping with Canadian gun legislation. I hope they push so hard. I hope they try to take it all and they piss off so many Canadians that we get another truckers type protest for the guns. We really do need that, because that's the only thing that's going to save Canadian gun owners' rights, because there is something really malevolent going on behind the scenes, and I can't quite put my finger on it, but something is afoot, definitely. Trump is getting ready to send out some stimulus checks because the U.S. is out of debt because of all that tariff money. Not really. Apparently there was some kind of windfall because of the tariffs, but they're still in a deficit. Doesn't matter. We're going to send out stimmy checks. So maybe that's why gold is going up. And of course, the American public will eat it up, right? Because they're not thinking. They're just thinking about, hey, free money. Well, it comes with a cost. We're still paying for the inflation of all the money printing back in 2020 and 2021. But people don't think about that stuff. Why do you think the price of everything is so high right now? They're just going to keep it up. So anyways, guys, I got to get going. I think I'm going to be on the other side of this illness next week. We got Rod Giltaca coming back tomorrow on the channel to explain this gun confiscation regime that's about to take place. And doesn't look good, but there is silver lining. There is hope. So hold on for dear life. Move to Saskatchewan. Move to Alberta. If you can, this is the place to be when the shit hits the fan. The jet stream has changed just enough because of the heating planet that I think we will evade the worst of the nuclear fallout from the Minuteman missile silos that get destroyed down below us in North Dakota. But yeah, I think we'll be good. We'll still have guns. We'll still have guns here. We'll be the last holdouts, guys. So come one, come all, Canadians, to Alberta and Saskatchewan. We welcome you wholeheartedly. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.